everyone. This is another episode of Griot of the Diaspora. I'm your host, Nakaira G, and today we are talking to Enzali. You might have seen her already from a previous interview that we did last year, and we pretty much talked about the election that we were all anticipating that we are now dealing with right now, and just the experience of living in Ghana. And so we are here today because she made a big move, and I want to learn a little bit more about that move and why she did that. So, Nzali, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
So, okay, so before we get into like all the, deep stuff, so where did you decide to move to and why?
So, I currently am in Nairobi, Kenya. So, I'm in East Africa.
Okay.
And I think the biggest reason for the transition from Ghana to Kenya was that, well, number one, Kenya has now a nomad visa. So, they have a pathway to residency that is really easy for people like myself who work online or have a business that they run online. And then the second reason is really just because Kenya, when I came to visit, it was just a really chill vibe. And so at this point in my life, I wanted a little less struggle, a little more organization. And Nairobi offered that for me. Now, I will preface this by saying I've only been in Nairobi. I have not been to all the parts of Kenya yet, but I do plan on doing so very soon.
Okay, so that was even so much to even unpack. Okay, so because so many people um are often being, marketed to or advertised to about remote working abroad and being a digital nomad, but then we see there's kind of like this controversy around being a digital nomad in some of these countries. So can you kind of walk us through a little bit of like the digital nomad visa experience, as well as working remotely so far between Ghana and Kenya?
So the first part is I'm a virtual assistant and I have a virtual assistant agency. So everything that I do is online. When I was in Ghana, I had to have two routers within my house because my fiance also is a remote worker. So it was like I had to have two routers. We had to have a backup charging system in case power went out. We had to pray that we both didn't have Zoom calls at the same time and that, MTN or Telecel were going to be in our favor, right? Pray to the gods and the ancestors that it's going to work out. So it really did impact my work at a point, especially when we had that big internet break and like our internet went out for a while. I literally lost like one of my biggest paying clients at that time because she was just like, "What do you mean
Right.
a whole country out of internet for days?" She was like, I don't want to do that." Right. So that number one was like, oh, okay, I'm spending all this extra money to work from home. Okay. And then that was new for me because originally when I came to Ghana, I was teaching, I was an assistant principal and I worked at a university. So I didn't really have to think about that. But once I transitioned, it was like, whoa, this is really impacting me. So then when I came to visit Nairobi, like, first of all, everything is kind of like digitized in a sense. Like, even paying for things, they're not a cash based society. They use something called M-Pesa. Even at the market, like the open air market, you use M-Pesa with your market person. And so I was like, oh, okay. And it works. Like rain or shine, it's working. And then also, what I noticed is that the few little power outages that were had, it was like 5 minutes and then it comes back. And then when we were looking for apartments, all of the apartments had generators. And so I was like, oh, okay, so this might work. And then we never had an issue with our internet while we were visiting. And I also, just looking up the country and the city, it was like, oh, this is one of Africa's like tech hub, like our Safari, not Safari, Silicon Valley. So I
Hmm.
was like, okay, I think this will work. Now the real gotcha was when I came for my visit and I went on my YouTube channel and I was just talking about being a virtual assistant. I was at a co-working space. But within like 2, 3 days, 8 people had sent me applications. I was like, oh, so these people are like quick with it, like they are online. And I just didn't realize how many people are like digitally literate here and like without prompting, without anything. And since I've been here, I've gone to a few tech events and I've been able to get some really, really good talent out of Nairobi, which didn't need a lot of training. So I'm like, okay,
Okay.
yes, I don't have to train as much. So it just, those kind of like infrastructural differences when it comes to internet capability, lights, all of that was like, okay, yeah, this is a great next step.
That's really interesting because I think that even with that statement, there's even still a lot to unpack because a lot of times when we see these different videos, sorry, of content creators talking about why are people leaving Ghana. You were in Ghana for a very long time prior to the year of return, like I was, in terms of visiting and stuff like that. But you moved to Ghana prior to the year of return. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to talk a little bit about because I want to get really deep into this transition as well as the benefits of moving to Kenya, but I do want people to really understand why that transition was actually very detrimental because the things that you're mentioning right now, electricity, things just working,
Yeah.
digitizing, make knowing that when I go here it's gonna work and not having to deal with a lot of the day to day of just things not working. And I think sometimes being in Ghana, you kind of just get used to things not working and you end up
Mm-hmm.
spending majority of your time finding like 1,000 alternatives to this one thing that does not work,
Yeah.
that you've already invested into. So I want to get back to that because I think that that's the bulk of what this conversation is. But I do want to kind of talk about this exodus out of Ghana that seems to be happening because I've seen since
Yeah.
I left in May, I have probably seen about 10 videos made since May of why just particularly African Americans, not the diaspora, not
Yeah.
everybody else. There's a very specific like I don't know,
Like a
there's a lot of
zoning, tunnel
attention.
vision on our community
Yes,
and
there
what
is
we're
a
doing.
lot of attention on us.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about those different things. So I'll try to go in like steps the best way that I can. So let's just talk about like that quick experience. And like I said before, guys, if you have not seen the interview that I did with Enzali before, make sure you check that out because this interview will also answer probably some questions that we talked about back then and how much has changed now because we were dealing with a new election in Ghana and a new election in America. And so
Yeah.
now we are in the throes of both of those things, both positive and negative, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about, I know you said electricity and all those things, but I kind of want to really get people to understand what these things mean because a lot of locals experience this too. They talk about being a remote worker, but then losing jobs because the power
Yeah.
goes out. And okay, over the past, let's say, year since we last talked, what were some of the things that made you say, okay, I need to really start thinking about leaving Ghana rather than just sticking it out, for
Mm-hmm.
this big Pan-African movement that everybody thinks is
Mm-hmm.
happening that yeah. So
So
what in the past year would you what in the past year would you say was like, okay, now I'm really, really thinking about it?
well, there's a few things, and I would say for me, this thought was not just within the last year. It has
Right.
been 2020, 2021, 2022. I
Okay.
have
So
been
right after
thinking like,
COVID.
yeah, I have been
Okay.
thinking like, okay, what is going to be my next step? And I think that way because I think one of the beautiful parts about being a Black American is that we're not bound to one African country, right? And I think a lot of us have to get out of that mindset because if you're out of that mindset, then these conversations about why people are leaving Ghana and if you have citizenship, you're not staying in Ghana and all this kind of stuff wouldn't even be a conversation because and I think that's also because of my experience. Ghana was not my first African country. South Africa was my first African country. Then I went to Ghana. So for me, moving throughout Africa isn't a big deal. So that was the first part. Like I had been thinking about it. It just had come to where it's going to be a good fit for me. I initially thought I was going to go back to South Africa, but you know,
Mm-mm.
my fiance is Nigerian, and
Oh,
South Africans have a lot. And I will say this wasn't my experience when I was there, but in these last few years, there has been a lot of non what do you call
xenophobia,
it, xenophobic stuff that's kind of happening. And I was like, that's
femicide.
not going to work for us because if
Yes.
they're treating other Africans that way, eventually that's going to trickle
Trickle
down
down to you. Yeah.
to Black Americans who are there who are not having that experience right now. And so, and my man is another African. So I just was like, no, that's not going to work. So, but I wanted a place that was going to be less stress. And so I always joke with people and tell them like, in Ghana, in Accra, you can only get about 2, 3 things done maximum a day. 3 is really a stretch, right? Because things just don't work the way that something that's organized will work, right? Something that people have thought about, planned out the logistics will work. And so that weighs on you. I don't think that people understand the amount of stress it takes in always being the problem solver. And coming from an industry, I was a teacher where I was always the problem solver, and then transitioning out of that because I'm like, oh, that's too much stress. I don't want to do that in my 30s. And then being in a country where again everybody's looking to you to be the problem solver, I was just like, I don't want to do this. And I'm saying this as someone who really worked within the system. So working in schools, working in government spaces, private sector, and it's like people are always just kind of looking to you to do the heavy lifting. Because quite frankly, like you said, people are just very common with things not working. They're comfortable with things not working. So when you're a person who's like, okay, well, let's make it work, then again, all of the once you get that tag, oh, then everything shifts to you. Now you're the one who's gonna fix everything. You're the one who's gonna do all the mental labor, all the physical labor, all of that. And I was just like, do I want to run my business like that? Like, do I want to have to always be the one doing all the heavy lifting and just like having the extra stress of like things just not always flowing? Like, let's just say, okay, today we have this call, but
Right.
in Kenya right now, it's like 6 o'clock. Today alone, I went and got my hair retightened. I went to the cafe. I did some work. I came back home. I cooked dinner. Now I'm here with you, and I have a business call after this. And Ghana, that's too many things. Too many things to do, and you just can't get them done. And it'll be like, okay, you set the hair appointment. My appointment was at 7 a.m. The women were there because I got
There's
there at 7.
nothing open at 7 a.m. in Accra. Let me tell you right now, there's nothing open at 7 a.m. in Accra.
I anticipated nobody was going to be there. So I'm like, I'm going to just be sitting in the Uber. The women were there, set up, lights on, places clean. I'm like, they're like, oh, hi, Enzali, we're waiting for you. Waiting for me. So if it were a crowd, the people wouldn't have been there, right? Then they would have taken a break. Then I would have called Uber to take me to wherever else I needed to go. And Uber would have said, oh, I don't want to go to that place. Then it would have just, it's just always something. So you're like, okay, I got to think about it's not just I have to think about the one thing that I have to do. I have to also think about how to dummy proof the things that I need to do. So it's like I have to have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And that's a lot of mental load on people. And people don't really talk about that when they talk about what it means to live in Ghana. And I lived in the city, so I can only imagine moving into an area that's a little bit more rural, how much more, you know? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just the mental load. It's like, oh, I want to breathe easy. Here, every day I get up and go for a walk. The roads are paved. My sneakers are not dusty. People, like, literally, we go for like an hour walk every morning. And so it's just like, oh, okay. Like, it's just easy. Like, it's just easier. And I know
So
I
let's
will
talk
say that.
about that. Let's talk
I will
about
say this
that.
one more thing.
Mhm.
Kenyans will not say that this is easy, but they haven't left Kenya. They
Right.
haven't been
To
to West
know.
Africa. The
Mhm.
Kenyans who've been in West Africa will be like, that's why they're back home.
Mhm.
That's why they're
Mhm.
back home.
I
Yeah.
want to talk about that because a lot of times when people say, particularly when people examine and observe the Black American experience in Ghana, they
Yeah.
always say, "Oh, you guys are always complaining. You guys don't have patience. You have to have patience when you come to Ghana." But when patience is a 5+ year long process, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that I would talk to people about, specifically people who came to Ghana after 2019, I would always mention to them, like, for me, I have already seen Ghana over a decade. I have seen
Yeah.
what has changed, what has not changed. So to
Hmm.
you guys that are just now coming in, you guys are like, because you've already had such a desolate idea of what Africa was, anything that you see in Ghana, you think is
Yeah.
the Prince of Egypt. You just think
Yeah.
like, oh, they do have buildings. Oh, they do have houses. And it's like, but once you get past all of that, and you start figuring out how some of these houses are made, what's underneath these houses that you can't fix. You're
Yeah.
buying these houses and you have electrical issues and all these X, Y, and Z things. And sometimes people are saying that Black Americans are not patient enough. But you have somebody here who has been living in Ghana since 2017, and they finally decided to make that decision, to make that transition in 2025. So that was 8 years of patience,
Yeah.
So do you
I don't
feel
think this idea of patience is it's really kind of gaslighting because it's like, okay, once you travel throughout Africa, so like earlier this year, I went to Morocco. I was in Marrakesh. We were there for 2 weeks. Marrakesh is in the desert.
right?
Like we literally went into the desert and there was Wi-Fi and electricity. So if Morocco, who and literally the people were telling us they have no natural resources, they produce cars and sell them into Europe, and that's their big moneymaker in tourism, right? So if Morocco can have this form of development, I think they're smaller than Ghana, maybe about the same size. Why can't we? Right. Again, my first place that I went to in Africa was in South Africa. Parts of South Africa are very developed. Even the village, because I lived in the village, I lived in a rural area. I was in the Peace Corps. Even South Africa village is better than some parts of Accra. That's just the truth. And I had to go and fetch water every day, but it was still more organized. So it's like, okay, if they can have that in South Africa, South Africa just got free within our lifetime, and
Yeah.
Ghana has had independence since the 50s. It's like, okay, it's more than just people don't have patience. And I also think that that's a way to just try to other us because Ghanaians have the same conversations. So it's like, okay, if I'm here and I'm saying that our systems can work better for us, and a Ghanaian is saying our systems can work better for us, but you're only telling me I don't have patience, that doesn't make sense. That just sounds like you want a way to hush me from making an observation about something that's a reality. And if we can't speak about the realities, then how do we ever really come to any type of improvement? But then also, there's a part of me that really believes that that's just not the Ghanaian way. Like, they don't do anything fast because when you look at the history of the country, the majority of them were saying liberation later. And then Nkrumah said, no, liberation now. And a lot of them hated him for that. And because they didn't get what they wanted immediately, then you have the coup, you have this, you have that. And it hasn't been the same. Nobody has had the same vision since. And my personal belief from my observation of being there, I think that there are more people who are on the other side of the spectrum than the people who were on Nkrumah's side of the spectrum. And the people who are more on that side of the spectrum, a lot of them leave the country. So when we talk about this having patience, it's a bunch of crap. Like, people have patience, right? Like I said, I've lived in a village and I know how to survive in a rural space. that requires some patience. I've taught in those spaces. I've taught children who didn't speak no English and I didn't speak no Shitonga, right? That's patience. You learn as you go. So when people say that to me, I'm like, you are not talking to a rookie. You are not talking to somebody who just hopped off the plane for Dirty December and decided they were staying in Africa. Like, that's not my story. So, I just think that, and a lot of it is defensiveness too, right? But I think from our side, Black Americans, our culture is to call things out. Like, if something is not going well, we're going to say something about it, because if you don't, how are we going to fix anything? And so I think that's just a part of it. Like, Ghanaians get very defensive. Our culture is to be very like solution based, like, what are we going to do?
Mhm.
And so sometimes I think those things clash, and an easy way to dismiss us is to say we don't have patience. And that's just not true. Some of us don't, but most of us do, especially those who've been able to stay for long amounts of time.
Yeah.
I am Nail Gyptian, and I'm the owner of the Nail Gyptian Press On Collection, and I'm originally from Compton, California. I started doing nails in high school, but I started doing press on nails when I traveled to Ghana for the first time in 2013, which inspired me to make the Nail Gyptian Press On Collection. The style and design behind every nail set is inspired by the queens and goddesses of ancient Africa. I love when my customers tell me they feel inspired and empowered when they wear the nails, and it makes me feel happy that I'm able to connect with people in my community and make them feel beautiful.
Um, I want to talk about this money management that everyone is claiming that Black Americans don't have. Um, which also it intersects with the concept of patience, right?
Yeah.
Um, because there are people who come to Ghana with, we hear the stories of the people who are like, oh, I came to Ghana with $1,000. I'm not talking about those people, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Those
talking
people
about,
are off, and they wouldn't make it anywhere. Right? Because something is not right with them. So let's not talk about the exception. Let's talk about the rule.
right,
Authority.
right.
Yeah.
So though, and that's, and I'm glad that you said that, because even with that rule, right? Majority of the people who are moving to Ghana are over a certain age, right?
Yeah.
There is a lot of people that are over, let's say 40, just to be safe,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then there's also that other over 50 and over 60 population that
Mm-hmm.
is there to retire. So you
Yeah.
have people who are there who have either already built up their career, who have already, hopefully by that time, have had some type of assets, investments that they are also able to come with, capital
Yeah.
that they're able to come with. And then you have the population of people who are there living off of a pension, living off of retirement, that aren't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily really interested in starting a business. They're just there to, finish off the rest of their life, right?
Yeah.
And I hear this often that, oh, Black Americans come and they don't have money, or they don't know how to spend money. But I often ask the question, how can you have money management in a country where the prices are not true, where there
Mm-hmm.
are no regulations in place? When one day you can go somewhere and ask a price of something, and literally the next day it is a completely different price. Or if you go
Yeah.
with a local person, it's a completely different price. Or
Yeah.
if
It's
they think you're the local person, then it's a completely different price. So how can a people who are new to a country, who are now being looked at with all of this attention, because now there's all these announcements that we're in the country, which was different prior to year of return, right?
yeah.
There was no announcements that we were coming, right? But now in 2019, everybody announces it once they get to the airport. And there's
Yeah.
not realizing how even that translates into the rest of the actual reality. But I'm curious on, when it comes to money, how did you find saving money or handling money in that type of society where the prices are up to someone's discretion?
Um, so I always say that you can't budget in Ghana because things are always constantly fluctuating and changing. Your best bet is to try to keep a foreign currency that outweighs the CD. And I know that that is controversial, to some people, but that's how I feel like you're going to be able to live comfortably without feeling the pinch of everything going up and down all the time, all the time. Another thing that I feel like Ghanaian people don't acknowledge is that they are able to move money in a way that we're not, because they have a network of people. So when Kojo doesn't have money for school fees for his child, he just goes to 2 or 3 family members, collects the money, pays for the child's school fees, and pays them back whenever he pays them back or does not. Or if Amma can't finish paying for her, or she needs money to pay for her rent for the year, then she can call her auntie who lives in Maryland, and the auntie will send a few $100s, and Amma's rent is now paid. And then she'll just hustle to put the furniture and lights and water and all that kind of stuff. So they have a network, even like the Susu, like every job that I've worked at, we've had like a company Susu that wasn't organized by the company, it's just the people there, right? So they are in their country, their culture, where they can move money to make things work for them. We are immigrants in Ghana, so we don't have the same networks. You can't just roll up and take out a loan. You don't have 4 or 5 people you can call in Ghana to ask for money. So that's what you have to think about. In addition to people overcharging, prices going up and down, fluctuation against the dollar, things, like we said, things are always happening. There's always a problem that money has to then come into play to help fix. So it is very hard to budget. I think, again, the people that I have seen do extremely well in Ghana, I can't tell you how they made their money. And I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm saying, like, I just literally can't tell you how they made their money. The math doesn't math. And that's one of the truths that we have to also start telling. People are not telling the truth. And I'm just saying this as a person who's gotten a salary in CDs, as a person who's been an entrepreneur in Ghana. People are not telling the truth all the time. And the people who you see that are doing extremely well, either one, they don't really live in Ghana full time. 2, they make money outside and they just spend it in Ghana. Or 3, it's sketchy and we just can't tell you how they make their money. And then you have regular folks who are living regular lives and people are telling us that we're mismanaging money. So that's my little 2 pesewa on that.
I'm crying. No, that is really helpful, because I think, I mean, I've met people, listen, I have met people who were like, I came to Ghana with close to $100,000 and I lost it in a year,
Yeah.
and a lot of that had to do with lack of money management, right? But a lot of it had to do with the fact that these were people who had just got onto the continent and wanted to ball out and wanted to buy a house that they never lived in before, a type of house that they never lived in before, and they wanted to live a lifestyle that they didn't even live in the States, and they were making business moves that they had no experience in, so
I
there
was like,
are
even those who have experience, again, it's
Mhm.
everything moves slow. So to get a business up and running
Right.
in States, if you had $100,000 to drop into a business, could be something that happens in a few months. In Ghana, it's just not possible. Like, you have to get a building. Then what if something goes wrong? What if the person who rented you the building really isn't the owner? And then you got to go and pay again. And then tax
Just getting a
people
bank account can take a month.
yeah. And so it's like all of those things eat into people's money that people are not calculating. They're just, again, throwing it off on an easy, quick fix solution that you don't know how to manage your money. Because for example, there's a man that I know, he's into real estate. He has a big real estate development that he's basically doing. He's a Ghanaian American, but nonetheless a diasporan. And
No, no,
he used to work, he used to work on Wall Street. He lost tons of money, and his project still isn't all the way done. So it's like, okay, you can't tell me that a person who worked on Wall Street don't know how to manage money. That person knows how to manage money. It's just in this system, it's a lot more difficult because there's so many uncertainties. that come with it. Unless you have an endless pit of money or a really good network, it's very difficult to set up things quickly, to make a return, and all of that. Like, I feel like it just takes time, and people are not really giving us the grace for the time, right? And people are just, again, trying to throw it off on something easy.
Real quick, y'all, make sure you download my new ebook. It is a travel planner and journal. I made this about a year and a half ago, and it's really, really cool. There are 10 different entries. So as you are on your travel journeys, make sure you download this ebook. It's only $10, and you can get it on my website today at nakedgoldonline.com. You can download it, you can print it, whatever works for you. Make sure you cop that today.
And so lastly, on this money management conversation, because you mentioned being able, working remotely and things like that. And I think that is something that I really want to talk about a little bit, because I noticed there's this conversation happening where I did a few videos on this where people are saying, particularly the Black Americans are causing the rent to go up, and we are the cause for all of the increases in price. And when it comes to rent, apartments, when it comes to the houses that people are building, a lot of
Yeah.
the restaurants and venues are now just catering to foreigners, even off season, which is not December, I guess, like so
Yeah.
11 months out of the year, it's still very high prices. And I remember because I was obviously in Ghana for the past 3 years. I noticed how when December came around, so many locals were just complaining about like Ghana is not for Ghanaians anymore. That was like the phrase all over social media. Ghana is not for Ghanaians anymore. Ghana is not for Ghana. None of these December events we can participate in because they're priced in dollars and all of these types of things. But then I also was hearing from a lot of diasporans who were like, this stuff is expensive for us too, because for people who live in Ghana, a lot of us, like you said, even though you can't budget, but for a lot of us, we are trying to live off of a certain amount for a certain amount of time. We're not trying to spend what we would be spending in America. But when
Yeah, no.
December comes around, you can end up spending $5,000 and not even realizing it because everything is just so expensive.
The prices go up in
The
December.
prices
And
go up and in dollars.
yeah.
And in dollars, right?
What I would say to that is we don't make the prices for these things. Black Americans do not control the economy in Ghana. We're such a small fraction of the people who actually live there. And most of us are not citizens. So we have no say in economic matters. We are literally just accepting what is there, right? So when it comes to inflation, we can't control that. When it comes to price gouging, we don't control that. When it comes to importation cost and taxes, all of those things are Ghanaian, ran, and led. We have no say in any of those matters. And who wants to pay more? Let's just think common sense, everyday logic. Nobody ever wants to pay more. None of us coming there want to pay more. And I have heard a lot of Black Americans saying that they're not going to Ghana because when they went a few years ago, this was the price. Now it just seems like the price keeps going up, 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 and up. So that's why people are looking at more places to go. And as the price is going up, the quality is not going up. So I just say that we don't really have control over that. And again, we are such a small portion of the population in that country that like this, we don't even make a drop really in
Right.
the bucket to do what people think that we're doing. Again, I think that it is a scapegoat to say foreigners, and foreigners automatically means Black Americans when there are other foreigners who are in the country who've been there for generations. And they actually have a lot more say than we do. but people don't like to acknowledge that. Like, if you want to talk about pricing and how things that are happening to the environment, and now you need to import more foreign goods and all that stuff, that really has nothing to do with us. There's some other foreign groups that have a lot more influence and impact in those areas than we do. I would say to my fellow Ghanaians, we would love the price to come down. So if there's something that you all can do in means of voting, it means of putting pressure on your politicians, the people that represent you in government and make these decisions. If y'all can convince them to stabilize the cedi, to make the prices go down, we would love that too. We absolutely would love that. And I'm just going to throw this out there, and I'm going to say, because the people who run one of the biggest events in December are my frat brothers, right? And they're Ghanaian through and through, from a very powerful Ghanaian family. And they're making their own prices for whatever the reasons, whether it's we don't have the production materials to do this the way we want to, so we have to ship it in, or whatever it is. The point is, the people who are leading some of the biggest events in Ghana during these times are none of them are Black American.
None of them.
So that's the other funny thing. So we're literally just coming to spend money, like, but the people who are organizing, creating the prices, all of that, all of those people are like Ghanaians or another African from another country. It's not us. So I don't really know what to say to that. I just feel like people always have to make somebody else the issue. And because we are more visible in the online space, I think we've become an easy go-to of, well, these people are the problem. But let's really talk about what has happened in Ghana's economy since 2019. We really have to look at the former administration and the mismanagement of money across the board. There is a reason that we are in some of these situations. And it, again, is about economics, and that is nothing that an African American controls in Ghana. So